Oh, what is up, Talk to Me listeners? It is Thursday. It is 8 p.m. Eastern. It is uncontrollednoise.com. We are going to do a 2-hour special on Dimebag Daryl tonight. You guys know my love of Pantera. If you've ever listened to the show, you know that I love Pantera. And a lot of times I think to do some specials in December when Dime was taken from us. But you know what? You should always celebrate the birthday, not the death day. And Dimebag's birthday was a couple of days ago. He would have been 53 years old. And I'm going to play some tunes tonight. Got some great guests coming on. Baco from the Cobras and Fire podcast, Chris Aiken from Classic Metal Show, and Ian Wadley of the Rock and Metal Combat podcast, all scheduled to come on tonight. So sit back, relax, get a black tooth, and let's have some fun tonight. So let's check out some more classic Pantera, and then let's get a good old Baco on the line here. So that was Domination. So let's do some By Demons Be Driven. And then we'll pull up Baco from the Cobras and Fire podcast. Hello, Baco.
Horns up, baby.
Horns up. And black tooth in hand, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to go with the Silver Bullet, Dime's other drink.
There you go. Yeah. There you go, man. Well, how are you doing, Baco? It's been a few days since I've seen you.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Of course, always good to talk to you. It sounds like you're doing okay.
I'm doing fantastic, man. We're going to do a 2-hour show all about Dimebag Darrell. How can you go wrong?
Absolutely, you can't. Basically,
absolutely.
I actually have something to throw at you about Dimebag, because I texted you on Record Store Day. I can't remember whatever the last one was, that I found a Dimebag. It was like a 12-inch EP, and I texted you a picture of it and asked if you had ever heard of this thing, and you never got back to me. That kind of hurt my feelings. What's going on there, buddy?
I still don't think I've ever heard of that. So tell me about it. Did you buy it? Do you own it?
I did. Yeah. It was and it's actually really cool. It's got Dime singing on some stuff. It's all unreleased.
Oh no, yeah. I know what you're talking about. It came out with the last Dime Vision that they put out. They put out a special. Yep. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it was a special Record Store Day release. Now, it was actually a leftover from Record Store Day of yore. So I don't know how I even managed to score it, but I did. When I saw it, I just grabbed it and bought it. But no. You hurt my feelings, though, by not getting back to me. You're typically more responsive.
Well, it happens. It happens. So Baco, let's knock this out real quick. Rockin' Pod Expo 3 was a huge success. I cannot. I've probably texted and called Chris Sinzak 100 times a day since then just to tell him how great of a job he did. But man, it was looking back on it, man, it was absolutely amazing.
It was kick-ass. You're making me feel like a dick. I'm trying to give him some space, let him cool down. I was I didn't want to hit him with a lot of stuff, but yeah, of course, a lot of love towards Chris. He does a great job with that, and come on, bigger and better every year, right?
Right. Yeah. The venue
we always
was
get
great.
Stuck next to each other, which is awesome.
Yeah, and we still don't do each other's shows or take pictures with each other. So.
Apparently, yeah. Well, there's a couple photos of us this year, but I figure, I guess we probably both realized we're on each other's shows quite a bit, so it didn't have to be a priority in Nashville, right?
That's true.
We spent a lot of time together.
Great photo with me, you, and Michael Sweet. I mean, you can't go wrong with that.
Not at all. I got a hug from him right after that.
I'm pretty sure he pushed me away. So. He's like, get this guy away from me.
Not at that point.
Is he your friend? Well, too good, man.
Look for our Rocket Pod recap part 3 to get the behind-the-scenes story of that one. But
oh, good Lord.
Anyway, yeah, on to Dimebag.
On to Dimebag. So what was your introduction into Pantera, and what was some of the first stuff you heard?
Oh, first stuff I heard was definitely Cowboys from Hell. Freshman year in college, one of these high school dicks that worked at the restaurant that I was working at during that time, he kept putting it in the boombox in the kitchen, and it was so different and so abrasive. It really took me about, I don't know, until I heard Mouth of War to, off the following record to really get it, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
But this little snot, he was so into it, and he was one of those passionate metal fans that I always embrace. I even if I don't like what they like, I like the passion and how much it means to them. And I remember that little fucker, man. He was just always about the music and stuff. He'd wash dishes and he'd go if that tape ended, he had to run right over in the middle of a cycle and flip it over. But for me, it was Mouth of War that drew me in, and at that point, it kind of clicked with me, and I got what was going on there because the sound of Pantera was so different, even for thrash metal fans. It was very harsh, very abrasive, from Phil Anselmo's voice to Dimebag's guitar tone. It just didn't. It was not a natural progression. It was like a dagger that kind of broke things up. You know what I mean? And once you get into it, though, and you get why it was so influential and so important, it started to make sense. But yeah, my God, as a guitar player, as a guy who's been in a band playing guitar, I should say, Dimebag's up there. I mean, he's one of those all timers.
Oh, there's no doubt on that one. I mean, he's always probably going to be top 5 in those top 100 guitarists of all time kind of lists, and may not even get as much credit as he should. Kind of being taken from us early in his life. Well, I guess maybe sometimes in the history of guitar players and such, dying early actually probably helps your career.
Yeah, maybe he didn't die early enough.
Yeah, he was 38. So
yeah, okay.
Nobody cares about you when you're 38.
Yeah, but you're a little whippersnapper. Did you get in right on Cowboys from Hell, or
no? Absolutely not. I remember driving around with friend of the show Jeremy Owsley, and he had Vulgar Display of Power, and my infantile metalhead head couldn't wrap my head around when Dimebag would go into a solo that the guitar would drop out, and so there would be it'd be that kind of Van Halen technique or whatever, and so like that always irked me. But I actually got to, when I spoke with Ricky Rackman, I got to tell him that he was really the one that pushed Pantera over the edge for me, was because when Far Beyond Driven was released, they did a special like the week or two before it was released. And me being the kid I taped Headbangers Ball each week, watched it all through the week. And by the time I watched that episode over and over and over, I was 100% a Pantera fan, and went and bought Far Beyond Driven week 1, help it become a number 1 album in the country, and then kind of went back.
I think you pushed it over the top.
Yeah, I was the one. I was. They almost lost out to whatever number 2 was, but if it wasn't for me, they can thank me later. But yeah, man, I jumped in on the second album, and haven't looked back since.
They
third album.
To go back just to Dimebag, he was one of the first guys like post, probably the first guy since like maybe Ace Frehley or Eddie Van Halen. Because there's a couple of 80s. I like Jakey Lee and George Lynch a lot too, but there was something more real and authentic about Dimebag that none of those guys had. And I talked about that metal passion of the dishwasher at the restaurant I worked at in college. I mean, Dimebag was the walking embodiment of that. He just carried everything. Like there was no he didn't hide anything up his sleeve. He was who he was. But as a player, my Lord, this guy, it's like he could do almost anything, but it would always sound like him, much like Eddie Van Halen, one of his idols, He just had this knack. He could play Kiss, Ted Nugent, and damn near everything. And he would sound exactly like those songs, but also sound exactly like him somehow.
Yeah, he was definitely one of those dudes that he was playing guitar when he was playing guitar.
Yeah.
And one of the best things I ever read was someone was breaking down the song Walk. And to me, Walk's overplayed. I'm kind of sick of it. You go to sporting events, you hear it. You go to any function, anytime anybody's like, let's play a Pantera cover, it's Walk. So I'm a little over the song, but sometimes when it comes on in rotation and you hear it, you're like, this is a really good song. It's just a little overplayed. But the solo in that song, they talk about how it's very hummable and singable, and that you know what's going on there. and it's such a simple song, and Dime could have shown every guitar chop that he had, but he decided to play something that was a little bit more from the soul, and for you to be able to sing and hum along to. And he had that knack.
Yeah, he really did, and he was so broad in his taste. And I always think that helps with any artist, that when you have a wide variety of things that influence you, you end up, no matter how niche you get, because you don't get much more niche than Pantera, but he could always pull back and pull on that AC/DC, Kiss, Van Halen, even some more poppier influences, and throw it into a solo. And by the way, probably one of the best rhythm guitar players that were ever walked the planet.
Oh yeah. Did you ever get to see them live?
Oh, plenty of times. And the last time was on the Reinventing the Steel tour. I don't know how many dates they had left on that, but one thing that stuck in my brain, especially a few years later after he was murdered, was that Phil Anselmo said something on stage that was I'm paraphrasing here, but it was along the lines of like, you guys probably won't see us for a while again.
Wow.
And I was like, what? I don't even know what that means. And no, he said something longer than like, we're going to take a break after this. But now that we kind of know the backstory there, that like Phil wanted to like, I'm kind of done with Pantera for a while.
Yeah.
And the rest of the band kind of sat there waiting for him to go, okay, we'll do Pantera again. But, so that was the last time I saw him.
Yeah, it's always looking back, you kind of wish you knew that was going to be the last time you saw them, because I saw them obviously on the Reinventing the Steel tour, but I saw them in Chicago.
Okay.
And it was Soulfly, Nothing Face, and Morbid Angel. So I think that was like one of the last. I think there was one more America run, and then they played a couple of shows overseas, and it was over.
Yeah, it's too bad. But honestly, I know we're trying to celebrate Dimebag, but I think Pantera peaked about 2 records prior to that. And I'd love to still have them around and kind of do whatever they're doing, and maybe they can recover it, but it just seemed like it had ran its course. And even the band after, what was the name of the band that Damage Plan?
Yeah, Damage Plan.
And that kind of seemed like, as far as Dime's musical influence, a continuation of where he was at. And I just missed that groove that he had and the inventiveness that he had on those first 3 records. I'm the first 3. By first 3, I mean Cowboys, yeah. Vulgar, and Far Beyond. I know they had those 4 records ahead of that, but
we don't talk.
The point being, there's so many bands that are like that, though. I mean, that like there's this like little tiny capsule that when they were great, and so that's kind of how I feel about Pantera.
Well, I think they would have been like any other band from that era and even before. I mean, you know, even Metallica, even a Megadeth, they all go through their lull. You know, Anthrax that whole time was in a lull, and they're somewhat out of it now. But
and he was playing guitar solos on Anthrax for a while there.
Yeah, he was like the 5th member of Anthrax there for a minute. But when I went to see Metallica here a few months ago, they did I guess like a medley of songs before Metallica came out, and one of the biggest reactions was Walk. They did they did a snippet of Walk, and you know everybody sing it is all sing along songs, you know, Highway to Hell and you know all those type, just the standards. But hearing
I never got Walk, by the way. That you said you got sick of it. I never really that one never. Look, I agreed with what you said about that solo. I love what he did there, but that one seemed kind of a meathead tune. But anyway,
but what I was saying was seeing 23,000 metalheads in a building doing the respect Walk part.
Yeah,
you know, screaming it all. You just know that an actual full-on all 4-member Pantera right now could sell some tickets. You know,
yeah, absolutely. I was only talking as a creative entity. Maybe they had tired out. As a live band, they never lost it,
right?
As far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I agree. So I'm assuming, I guess you never saw Damage Plan.
I did not. No. I'm not even, look. If they would have done a second record and tour, the odds are I probably would have. Dime was like one of those, like, almost like a Zakk Wylde guy for me. Like, you got to go see this guy if you have the chance. Because, you know, especially because they would have been playing a smaller venue, so you get right up close.
Yeah, we saw them. I actually got to see them when they came through Louisville in 2004, like a few months before he was murdered. And I almost didn't go, but it was one of those like, hey, I got a free ticket. Do you want to go? I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't really care for Damage Plan. And he's like, come on, let's go. And I was like, all right, fine, let's go. And then they ended up, playing their whatever songs they had, and then they closed with A New Level and Walk. And they even made some comment from the stage, like, you know, it's not us that's keeping us from doing these songs live. It's someone else. And,
wow.
And, you know, did that whole thing. But I did get to talk to Dime after the show, and I've talked about this on the podcast a few times. But I got to talk to him afterwards and kind of had I met him when I was 14, and then I talked to him again when I was, 2004? I was 25, so a good 10-year run of meeting him over the years. And so for some weird reason, I just had a chance to be like, hey, man, you know, thank you for everything you've done. I got to tour in a band and blah, blah, blah. Just got to kind of have some closure. Yep. And then he was murdered a couple of months later. So it's always been a very odd moment in time, looking back to my last interactions with Dime.
That was, obviously, well, first of all, the way he died was horrible, but that was one of the rare instances, probably since John Lennon, and even with John Lennon, I was too young to really get it. You know what I mean? But oh, that's right. I forgot about that. But I literally was at work when I found out, and of all people, my boss told me. He's like, "You ever heard of Dimebag Darrell or Pantera or something?" Yeah. Yeah. It turns out he got shot and murdered because he knew I liked music, right?
Yeah.
And that was the only reason he was telling me. And then, I actually was probably pale-faced and just stood there for about, 15 seconds just thinking about that and thinking about the people that, I suddenly felt I needed to talk to. If you'd have been in my life, I probably would have called you right away.
Yeah.
I just, I haven't had a lot of those moments with artists passing in my life. It just that guy meant so much to me. And he wasn't even, he meant so much to me because of who he was, because Pantera probably doesn't crack my top 20 as far as favorite bands, as much as I love them. I mean, I just have so many damn bands I like. But he mattered to me, and that was. I mean, I was actually kind of pausing as I talked to you about this, remembering that day. It was difficult. When did you find out?
I found out pretty quickly. And the one thing that what had happened a few months earlier was my bandmate in Primer, Bobby Burns, who had went on to Soulfly, he had actually called me a few months earlier saying that the Soulfly camp had heard that Phil had died. And so I prematurely told some of my friends that Phil had died. And then I turned out to be the bearer of wrong news. So I got a phone call from somebody saying that they think they heard Dimebag died. And that's the early, I mean, it's still 2004, but it's still early in the internet for me.
Oh, yeah. It was not that, I mean, yeah.
And where my apartment complex had a little gym, and it had 2 or 3 computers you could go log on to. And so it's in the middle of the night, and I run down there, and I go into my apartment, and I'm typing away on the, whatever Google, if Google was even out yet, or Ask Jeeves or something. And the first thing, it finally popped up. I think CNN was one of the first ones to say something about it. And so once it confirmed, then I was because I was in the middle of the night because of the show, and it was, midnight, 1 o'clock or whatever. And I started to call my friends. Then I'm like, it's not a hoax this time, I swear. And but I hated being the one to tell some of my friends that Dime had passed.
But Pantera, as far as long as I've known you, has always been kind of your band.
Oh yeah, it is 100% my band. This one, Metallica, Megadeth, all that stuff. It was. I think it was also meeting them over the years, because, like I said, friend of the show, Jeremy, we would go and search out buses and hotel rooms, and they were always just the nicest guys.
Suck some dicks.
Well, you got to do what you got to do, Bucko. Yeah.
I want to meet Dime, so I gotta look at a few testicles. But
it's what you got to do.
But God, I was actually going somewhere before I distracted myself.
Stop thinking about me sucking dick.
Much as I want to do, but whatever. I think. All 4 of those guys, they seemed more relatable than almost any band ever, almost in a certain sense. Other than your local band, if someone saw you or me play, we're probably pretty easy to get in touch with.
Right.
Those guys actually seemed across the board the real deal. They walked the walk and talked the talk when it came to they actually gave a shit about their fans.
Oh yeah, and the one thing that was also big about them was the home videos, and so you kind of got into their world. And
you got to see Phil Anselmo's balls in those.
Yeah, you got to see all kinds of stuff in those. But you also got to see the crew members. So when we would go hunting them down, you might see Big Big Val or something.
You are like you're like the Matt Porter of Pantera. No, you're the Julian Gill of Pantera.
Ooh,
you're freeze framing and zooming in, and that's the guy we need to look for, because that'll get me into the testicle room. That'll get me to Dimebag.
And it worked every time. That's a huge compliment, being the Julian Gill of Pantera.
Yeah, no, that's a high compliment. Yes.
Well, man, what's your lasting memory of Pantera, and give me a song to play on your way out here.
I'm gonna pick a song that's gonna be kind of basically a layup for you, because I'll never tire this. But as far as lasting memory, it'll always be Dimebag. It always will. Because like I said, like, as much as I love that band, and I own their entire catalog, and I go back to it from time to time, and I snatched that fucking Record Store Day exclusive 2 years after it came out, he was the guy.
Oh yeah.
You know, he's a walking embodiment of fun, believability, and you don't get more authentic than that dude. He is just the real fucking deal. And as far as song, and by the way, thanks for having me on before I can check out. Make sure to stick around after Talk to Me and hear Cobras on Fire and our part 2 of our Rockin' Pod recap, which is a lot of fun. Doesn't feature you, but other podcasters.
Not. Right. We were sitting right next to each other. So.
But yeah, we sat right next to each other all day. We had a lot of fun, and we shared some stories that neither one of us can share on air. But as far as song, I'm gonna take an easy one because I love it. I hope you don't hate me for it. Mouth of War, baby.
I already had it queued up. I was like, I feel it coming, man. Well, Baco, right, man, it's always great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on and celebrating some Dimebag Darrell with us here. Talk to Me, Uncontrolled Noise, man. Take care.
Cheers.
take all this shit seriously. To me, it's just one big jack-off session.
What is decon? There's the roof.
Hey, man, it's tough to be first class when you're white trash. Roach class, all the way.
Tell you what.
Motherfuckers kick some dick tonight. I'm checking it out, man. Everybody has some hell raising in them. Checking out the fire coming on. Step towards
All right, guys, let's see if we can get Chris Aiken on the line here. Gotta hit some buttons, make the thing happen.
Yo to the yo.
Oh, everybody's ready to go tonight. I love it. It's
fucking Pantera night, dude.
Fucking Pantera night on the Talk To Me podcast.
Damn straight, man. It brings an extra energy, doesn't it? It's not one of those where you're sitting back, falling asleep, waiting for the shit to happen.
No, man, the show is flying by. I'm almost an hour in, and it's almost over, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, dude, nothing Pantera ever sucks other than One Bullet. So,
Ooh.
I mean, holy shit. Fucking
Ouch.
great to hear these tunes, man.
It's been fun, man. It has been fun. Chris Aiken, Classic Metal Show, welcome to Talk To Me live, uncontrolled noise, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. I guess we're talking fucking Terra, huh?
Yow! Now you can use your redneck accent that I'm always offended by.
My goodness, we're going to talk some Pantera tonight. Terrible. Well, man, let me know your introduction into Pantera. How far back do you go? Wow. Before Cowboys.
Okay.
I was in the military, and I was living, I was on Fort Ord, which was kind of Central California.
Okay.
Right outside, it's like right outside of Monterey. And there were two clubs. One was the Stone and one was the Omni. And, I used to go to those clubs every weekend because that was where all the rock stars hung out. And I was just a big music fan.
Yeah.
And I used to go up to those clubs only because that's where rock stars would hang out that were local. Like you'd go in there and see Zakk Wylde at the bar, or Jim Martin from Faith No More would be hanging out or whatever. You know, you would see these guys. And so I would see just anybody. It didn't matter. If they were playing on a Friday or Saturday night, I was going. I really didn't give a shit who was playing. And more than one time, I saw this band come through that I didn't know nothing about them except that they were from Texas. And every time I saw them, they kicked ass.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Pantera. So I saw them on I don't remember what the last record was before the real record started, but it was whatever that tour was, what was that, Power Metal?
Yeah, Power Metal.
You know, I saw them and they were playing mostly those songs, but then they were playing like songs that they kept saying were new and that they were going to be different. And you know, the one I remember the most was I saw them like 3 times in that era, and they played The Art of Shredding 3 different times as the close.
Okay.
And it was like they're playing those PST 88s that all sound like Judas Priest.
Right.
And all of a sudden they would just come up with Art of Shred, and you know, I was hooked. And then, you know, shortly after, I had a friend that ended up with the CD of Cowboys from Hell, and I knew of the band, so I ended up having to trade him. And I still remember the stupid trade because I was such a dork. I had to trade him my 9 Inch Nails, Pretty Hate Machine, and Pearl Jam, and something else to get the Pantera Cowboys from Hell disc off of him, which was it felt like such a lopsided trade at the time, but boy, did it work out in my favor because I still have the original CD that I ever had, and I've worn it and every other Pantera CD completely out. So definitely, Pantera's my favorite band, much like yours. So love them, man.
Yeah, definitely my number one band, and I cannot stress on this podcast enough how many times over and over how much that band has meant to me, and it does come down a lot to what I was talking to Baco about a little bit, was just how personable they were, and you know, when you met them, you were like, holy crap, you know, Dimebag's my best friend.
Sure. Well, you know, and being in the business pretty much most of their career, you know, I had opportunities to really get to know them, and I knew Dimebag and Vince and Phil pretty well, and I still know Phil pretty well. I still talk to Phil, you know, every time he comes through, and he actually, you know, I sent him a copy of my book because there's a Pantera chapter in my book, and you know, he and I have corresponded back and forth about that, and I know Kate is his girlfriend / manager fairly well, so. It really, they really were a band that treated everybody like a family, and obviously I had a little bit of different access than most people, but Dimebag especially was was always the character, man. And it's funny because I've had a lot of friends that know that I knew those guys, and they'll ask me, well, was he different than the videos? And he really wasn't. No. I tell this story all the time. I interviewed Damage Plan. It's out there on YouTube if anybody wants to listen to it. But I interviewed Damage Plan in 2004, and I kind of pissed him off a little bit because I had interviewed Philip like a month or two before or something, and I wasn't gonna just, as much as I was friends with those guys, I wasn't gonna just let it go, because it was right when the big battle was, when Damage Plan was starting, and they were both squawking at each other, each side. So I had in my pocket typed out what Philip had said to me about those guys, and I read it to those guys, and they just were fucking pissed. I mean, Dimebag was like, he may call it shallow, but this isn't shallow, and Vince was like, he's not, he's dope fucked. That's what he is. He's dope fucked. Like they're just really squawking at each other. So it was one of the more tense conversations that we ever had. And I mean, I was literally sitting 4 feet from him, from all 4 of the Damage Plan guys. So now those guys, they were sitting on like stools, and I was sitting on a great big old speaker. And at the end of it, Dimebag comes over to me and he goes, you're going to have to pay for that, son. You're going to have to pay for that interview. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes to the other side. We were in this big studio. He goes to the other side of the studio, and he finds another giant amp like the one I'm sitting on, and he pulls it over, and he climbs up on it, and he goes, let's go, son. Let's go. And I was like, what the fuck? And he gets in the Karate Kid pose. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. So I climbed right up and got in the Karate Kid pose too. And, a big fat son of a bitch. So it was it had to be an interesting look. And meanwhile, Vinny had the camera out, he's filming, and Dime goes, on the count of 3, on the count of 3. And I was like, I'm going to fucking kick you, dude. And he was like, on the count of 3. And we did 3, 2, 1, boom. And we both kicked each other in the chest. And we both went flying off these fucking speakers, because we're standing on a speaker. And we both fall to the floor. And of course, everybody goes and helps Dime, and nobody at all helps me. But it was just how he was. And he got up, and we laughed it off, and and just shook hands, hugged, and was like, at least you got the balls, son. At least you got the balls. I was like, all right, brother. But, dude, I had so many fun experiences with those guys. I mean, just tons of them. I really, it's weird. And, I mean, you may know this, you may not know this. You have, when you've done this business as long as I have, I've been doing it since 94, maybe, 95, whatever it is. You don't necessarily feel like you're friends with too many musicians, but a lot of times you'll be like their friend in Cleveland or their friend in whatever city you're in. Yeah. And I really felt like I was that way with the Pantera guys. Every time Pantera came into Cleveland, they would call, or they would, or send a message through the radio station or whatever to invite us to do something. And we always did, stuff with, we did stuff with Damage Plan. We did tons of stuff with Pantera. I've personally done stuff with Anselmo and the Illegals and Down, and I've probably emceed 15 events with some member of Pantera in them. So I've always had a close relationship with them, and I miss them a lot, man. I honestly don't have any. I have other rock and roll friends, but I don't have any that always treated me that good. And they really did.
Right. And I know this is a celebration of Dime, and I don't want to keep harping back to his death, but, you being in Cleveland and Columbus is just a few hours down the road. How quickly did you hear about his death?
Well, dude, the ironic thing, and I'm sure I'm one of 8 million people that all say the same fucking thing, but I really was supposed to be at the show. I mean, it was only 2 hours down the road, and I was going to be going with my friend Kurt. And last second, I just was like, I wasn't digging the Damage Plan very much. I just, I liked like 2 or 3 songs on it. I liked the Blink of an Eye, ironically. was probably my favorite song on that one. And whatever the sort of ballad was, I don't even remember what it was called, but I just wasn't feeling it. So the thought of driving not the 2.5 hours to get there, it's like 2.5 hours to get there. And for me, the thought was my job started at 6:30 in the morning. So I was like, God damn it, we're going to be down there till midnight, then drive back. Then I got to turn and go to work and work another day, with like 3 hours of sleep. And I was like, I just don't want to fucking go. So I didn't go. And then I got up that morning and I had an email from my friend Kurt, and he's like, good thing we didn't go. Dimebag is dead. And I was like, what the fuck? And, I went to Blabbermouth, I think, the old Blabbermouth, and I think it was already there. And I was just like, holy shit, and quite honestly, it was a shock. It was sad. I won't lie and say I didn't fucking shed some tears because, and Dimebag was like a friend to me, man. And it was tough. It was very, very, there's only been 3 guys that have died in my lifetime of music guys that I've really ever felt sad about. And that's Dio, Lemmy, and Dimebag. And Dimebag hit me way the hardest because I have so much history with the band and I did so many cool things with them. And, hearing that he was gunned down was like, how can that be? How can it be that guy? If anything, I thought it would be Phil.
Yeah.
And not that I would want that to happen to Phil either. I wouldn't want it to happen to Rex, who I can't fucking stand. But, I just was really, really sad by it. And still am. I mean, it's what, how many years? 15 or whatever now? And
yeah, it's 15.
It's still a bummer, man. It's still, I'm probably the lone guy that watched Dime Vision and was sad because I just was like, man, we're missing so much shit that would have been. Can you imagine? And I think Rita said this to me once, but it stuck in my head. Can you imagine Dimebag with a Twitter account?
Yeah.
Oh my God. He would be fucking hysterical. And just some of the shit he would be doing on Twitter would be, his whole life was a Twitter account. That guy was the king of he would have been the absolute king of Vine video because that
yep.
always joking around, and it was always 2 to 5 second pranks, lighting somebody's foot on fire or pouring water on them in their sleep or whatever. He would. We're missing so much. Forget the music. We're just missing so much of the character. I don't know what the music would have been. I'm sure it probably would have straightened around. He would have found his groove, I guess. Maybe not. I don't know. He might end up being the guitar player in Hell Yeah, which that wouldn't have been good. But
not at all. No, the thing I think Rita and I talked about that on my episode with her. Talking about Dime having Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. If Dimebag would have had Instagram, like that would have just been a daily dose of just hilarity. And could you imagine a Dimebag Daryl podcast or something? He was definitely ahead of his time, not only guitar playing but also just in a visual medium. Because like I said, he was always out filming everything, and that's why when I sent you some tape of when I played in Akron fucking 20 years ago, you're like, why did you film this? And I'm like, it was because we liked Pantera and we loved everything they did, so we were going to be Pantera. We were going to film everything, and we thought we were cool.
No, and he was, man. He was so, and I think that's why his legacy lives on. One, he's maybe the greatest guitar player that most of us have seen.
Yeah.
I've seen Eddie Van Halen too, so it's a real close toss up there. But I personally like the style that Dimebag played a little more than Eddie. That's my personal opinion. But he was unreal as a performer. But you know what? Eddie Van Halen's an unreal performer, and there's not very many people that just worship him like they do Dimebag. People liked Dimebag. People like Eddie Van Halen's playing. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And Dime is universally loved, and he's missed. We have these birthdays and we have the anniversaries of his death and everything, and every time it's a bummer because we really got fucked out of a lot of great years of great entertainment, and not necessarily just on a stage.
Yeah, I've talked about this a little bit on the show too. is, you know, when I was in Primer, we played the Alla Rosa Villa in 2002, and it was kind of a dump then. And the backstage area, there's a little patio outside, and there was this rickety fence that was like half bent over in 2002. And I was just like, man, if you ever wanted to get into a show free here, you just take a running jump at that fence and you're in for free. And I think if I remember correctly, that's how the guy got in. I was like, damn it.
Yeah, that's exactly how he did it. Yeah. He jumped that back fence and just came in through the side door, came around the stage, climbed up on the side of the stage and shot him. It's like, whew, you know, just and it's a weird thing, dude, because I used to go to a lot of shows there and I've never gone back. I've never once gone back. I just can't bring myself to go there anymore, you know, and I know that's fucking bullshit and lame, and, you know, the odds are probably 9 zillion to 1 that nothing would ever happen again. But I don't think it's even about that. I think for me, it's more about the fact I don't think I could ever enjoy Prong or whoever it would be playing there. I think I would spend half the time thinking about Dimebag getting shot, and I think I would spend the other half of the time looking around to make sure I didn't get shot. You know, I think it's subconscious that, you know, because I personally was that close to those guys and that happened, that I don't think I could ever see another show there.
Well, it's been 15 years, and anytime you see a tour itinerary and the Alla Rosa's on there, I mean, you instantly think, oh, that's where Dimebag got killed. Or there's a photo of the Alla Rosa, you're like, oh, well, that's where Dimebag got killed. There's never been a time where I was like, oh, cool, Head PE's playing there. Oh shit! That's where Dime. You know, it's always the first thing is that's where Dime was killed. It's crazy that place is still going 15 years later. Honestly, most of those, anytime something like this happens in a club, you know, that club is gone. But yeah, they went they I guess persevered or whatever.
They persevered, but I always found it strange and somewhat disrespectful that they didn't at least change the name of the club.
Yeah. Insane.
You know, and that's the reason that I don't go, is because I feel like they embraced that as part of their legacy instead of saying, you know what, the legacy ends now.
Yeah.
You know, and they should have. They absolutely should have changed the name of the place. I don't care what honestly, they should have called it the Dimebag Bar and Grill or something. If you want to embrace history, you know, get your pull rock bar or something.
Right.
You know, something. If you want to celebrate the guy instead of, you know, carrying it on, because you're right, you know, 15 years later, and I don't care who plays there, when you see it on the list, everybody thinks about Dimebag getting shot there. It's shitty. I will never go back there. I gotta say that now.
Yeah, well, that's the truth, man. Well, you know, Chris, I appreciate you taking the time tonight, coming on, talking a little Pantera with me, a little Dimebag Daryl, and what song do you want me to end you out with?
Suicide Note Part 2, nice and mellow.
Oh, great album. You know, it's funny, Baco was talking about they kind of peaked on Far Beyond Driven, and with me, I thought that they kept going, and I think that The Great Southern Trendkill is highly, highly underrated.
It's my favorite record of everything they did. I just love the heaviness of it, and it's just straight brutality. I honestly think it had a lot to do is that's where Philip was. He was trying to, you know, get into all his death metal bands, because that was when he had like Necrophagia and everything else going on. And he was also working, and I believe he worked on this album. Seth Putnam from Anal Cunt was on like a bunch of these songs, and then Phil repaid the favor they put out some album. Don't ask me what it was called, but right at the same time Anal Cunt did, and it had like 40 tracks, and Phil was on like 22 of them. So, you know, they were like friends that were working together, but they were so heavy. And, you know, just listening to Dime play, that's the one time that Dimebag really went and played a different style of guitar. Yeah. Was on Trendkill, and he proved that he could play any style when he did that, because those songs are just so brutal, so good.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Suicide Note Part 1 into Suicide Note Part 2, because you can't have one without the other, Chris. So we will do that now. And, you know, Classic Metal Show, make sure you guys check that out. I know you already are, with their 6 million downloads they have. So I appreciate you, man.
Hey, man, good being on, man.
All right, take care.
that cannot see inside. Yours and mine. Yours and mine. When I'm hiding, when I need it, let me breathe. For I'll handle all this life I don't need. Would you look at me now? Would you look at me now? Can you tell I'm a man? Can you tell I'm a man? With the scars on my wrist to prove I'll try again. Try to die again. Try to live through this night. Try to die again. Forever free and using, sliding down the slide that breaks a will. Breaks a will. Mother's angel getting smarter. How smart are you to read this unfulfilled? It's a damn shame. When I'm hiding, when I need, let me breathe. For I'll handle all this life I don't need. It's time. Would you look at me now? Would you look at me now? Can you tell I'm a man? Can you tell I'm a man? With the scars on my wrist, with these scars I'll try again. I'll try again. Would you look at me now? Can you tell I'm a man? Can you tell I'm a man? With the scars on my wrist, with these scars I'll try again. Try to die again. Try to live through this night. Try to die again.
What's done is done, it goes so I cry.
What is up, Ian? How you doing, man?
Am I on air?
You are on air.
Oh, awesome, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well. You always got to save Ian Wadley of the Rock and Metal Combat podcast for hour 2. You know, first hour is a little bit more family friendly, but then you go into hour 2, you got to bring on the big guns.
Yeah, fuck that shit. Time for the degenerates, man.
So how's it going?
It's going great. You sent me the message on Skype. You're like, you're up after SN2. I'm like, what the fuck is he talking? And the funny thing is, I'm listening to fucking Suicide Note Part 2, and then it hit me right when you text me that. I've been sitting here getting drunk, thinking about Dime, listening to Pantera for the last hour. Honored to be on here and talk about Dime, man. So thank you, brother.
Oh, man, thank you for wanting to come on, man. So what was your introduction into Pantera?
Pantera, two friends of mine who were very influential, Matt Thiessen and Bo Handy. And they were kids. They were in the grade above me, and they were always into the underground. And, you know, while I'm sitting there, you know, listening to Cinderella and shit, you know, they would always like, no, you need to listen to this shit. And gave me a copy of Cowboys from Hell. And they're like, oh, this is so heavy. This is going to blow your mind. And let me borrow the CD. And I remember opening up, you know, it's got the pink writing on it and shit. I was like, this is glam rock like I listened to. I heard it. It blew my fucking mind. And I've been just an incredible fan ever since. First tattoo I ever got was the Pantera logo. Seen them countless times. Probably they're number 3 on bands. The only 2 bands I've seen more, unfortunately, is Kiss and Ozzy Osbourne. But I saw Pantera so many fucking times. Just so important to me, man. They're incredible.
When was what was the first show you ever saw?
First show I ever saw was, I believe, was right before Vulgar came out. Alpine Valley, Wisconsin. And it was them and Megadeth opening up for Skid Row. And just blew my fucking mind. And that's the one, if you watch the Pantera home videos when they built like the big pot leaf at the hotel and everything and shit, that was that show. And I always have to comment on this, is Megadeth filmed a video for High Speed Dirt at that show. And they show a pit, right? That pit was for Pantera. When Megadeth came on, it was dark already. And you see a pit in broad daylight. That was Pantera. I was there in the lawn, in the middle of that shit. And that always used to piss me off. Like, God damn, how can you do a video? And, you know, I love Megadeth. You know, and Ellefson, we all met him. He was a great guy. But, God damn it, how can you make a video and show another band's pit? You know, that's just, and I'll never forget there was these handrails going down the lawn. If you've ever been to Alpine Valley, Wisconsin, yeah, you know, just a huge lawn, very steep, and they got these guardrails going down. And when they played Primal Concrete Sledge, people just grabbed the handrails and started shaking them. They broke the handrails out of the fucking concrete.
Oh God!
It was mind blowing. I mean, and all bands were great. Even Skid Row was fucking good. You know, and Megadeth was great. It was before Countdown came out. They played some songs off of that, but they were still using the Rust in Peace like drum set and everything. But Pantera owned the fucking day, and it was so cool that there was so many people there wanting to see Pantera, you know, and they were like, you know, the first band up, and they were still up and coming, but the word was already out that, you know, this is the new shit, you know, this is what's going to change fucking metal, and it did.
Well, that was absolutely the times, you know, that was the times too where you know, Skid Row was at the top of their game with you know, Slave to the Grind.
Yeah.
And they were bringing out, you know, on that same tour, I mean, they brought out Soundgarden. I mean, they were a little ahead of their time with the bands that they were pumping out. But man, Skid Row, Megadeth, and Pantera all in the same day. What a great bill. Oh yeah, and you got to give Skid Row, you know, respect. You know, when they first came out, I hated them until I saw them live. And you know, when I saw them live, I was like, okay, you know. And then to come out with you know, Slave to the Grind, which was so much heavier and turned all the girls off. You know, they still had a couple ballads, but, you know, like a lot of the girls were like, oh, what's this monkey business? You know, that's not 18 in life. You know, but to take out bands like Megadeth and especially Pantera,
It was great, and what a time to be a metal fan. You know, there's so many times I get upset because I miss like great tours of the '80s, like you know, Maiden on the fucking Power Slave tour and shit like when metal was in arenas. But I'm so thankful that how many Pantera shows I got to see in the '90s. I mean, that means the world to me. Definitely one of my favorite bands of all time, and to me, the last band that changed the game as far as metal's concerned.
Yeah, thankfully I got to see Pantera, I think 12 times, and
shit, you got me beat. Holy shit.
There was a summer where I basically followed them like the dead, so that's where that came from. Did you ever have any interaction with Dime or Phil or anybody?
I've met Phil multiple times, hung out with him, talked to him, got punched by him, all kinds of shit. I met Rex. Never got to meet Vinny, unfortunately, and the Dime story is great. I saw him. It was Cold Chamber, Anthrax, and Pantera.
Nice.
And I mean, it was an incredible show. I saw that in was it West Palm or Orlando? So it was in Florida. But I'm crowd surfing. At the time, I was much thinner, and I used to crowd surf all the time. And I'm crowd surfing, and I go over the barricade, and I flipped ass over appetite. So when I landed, I'm in the little barrier in between, where the security guards hang out.
Yeah.
And I just see the crowd going crazy. Like, yeah! And me being the egomaniac I am, like, I already knew then I was going to have a great podcast and people know who I was. So I'm like, yeah, it's me! And, these people are going nuts. I turn around, Dime's playing his solo, and he's leaning over the stage, and he's got his guitar out. I turn around, my head smacks right into the headstock.
Oh, nice.
And he starts dying laughing, throws me a pick. I caught it, and then, like the good old days, they just make you go back out again and you get right back into the crowd. And, but so I never got to talk to him, but just that smile and that laugh from him and the pick, I mean, I got a shitload of Pantera picks in my time, but that was the one that was like, personally thrown to me by Dimebag. So, but it was just a magic night. And I think I got to see him about 9 times. So you got me beat, but, I feel bad, for people who never got to see him, and like younger fans who are discovering Pantera now and will never know the magic that was a Pantera show back in the day.
Yeah, you knew it was a Pantera show when the lights went out, and then there was just a waft of pot smoke like over the crowd. You're like, yep, we're at a Pantera show.
It was amazing. I remember seeing him at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago. It's still this day my favorite venue ever. And and there was this older guy in the crowd. It's funny because the guy's like my age, but we're talking back then. I don't think I was old enough to drink. And he's all fucked up. He's like, man, I love this Pantera shit, but I don't get you guys with this moshing. What the hell is moshing? So I'm trying to explain to him, I'm just like, it's like dancing but aggressive and shit. He's like, all right, whatever. And Pantera comes on, man, and everybody starts going ape shit. The pits start. And this guy's just like an octopus, just throwing arms and kicking his feet and trying to get into it. And he turns around and drop kicks me dead in the fucking dick. And I was like, oh, thank God it wasn't the balls. Getting kicked in the dick, it's no walk in the park, but it's better than if he hit balls. But he hit me right in the dick. And he's like, I'm so sorry, man. I'm like, I'm coughing. I'm like, it's okay. You're learning. This is your first pit. But it was just, seeing like all kinds of different eras of metal fans embrace Pantera and recognize their greatness. It was just amazing. And what Pantera created with the fans, like putting out the home videos, it made everybody feel part of something. They were like your band. Mm-hmm. There was no other band doing that. And I think those videos were damn near just as important as the music to drawing in the rabid fan base, because they were like us. They were fans. They were just partying, having a good time, and there was just this magic about being a Pantera fan in the '90s. Man, it was something else.
Yeah, grabbing those VHS tapes especially when they started coming out. I remember after 3 came out, we were at a concert, and they were going around still filming stuff, so I know the stuff's out there, and we were like, 4, let's bring on Pantera 4,
Oh, yeah.
and all this other stuff. And when I got the opportunity to interview Bobby Tongs, who pretty much filmed all that stuff, I jumped right on it because as a Pantera fan, I think Baco earlier called me the Julian Gill of Pantera, but you knew Big Val and you knew Grady and you knew
Whoa, Big Val!
All those guys, So when you saw them out,
guy, go for guy.
yeah, all that stuff. So I mean, the crew was almost as famous as the band.
Oh yeah, when I first got on Facebook, when it first started taking off, it was cool because I became friends with like a lot of cool people. Because, nobody had reached that, 5,000 limit and shit.
Yeah.
And I remember becoming friends with – I saw Tongs on Facebook and fucking sent him a friend request. He accepted it, and I'm talking to him. And I feel like I'm talking to a rock star just talking to Bobby. I mean, we messaged back and forth, and super cool guy. But, yeah, those guys were all rock stars, man. I mean, when you went to a show, you looked for Big Val.
Yeah, yeah.
You looked for Sonny. You looked for everybody, It was special.
Yeah, it was definitely Big Cat and all those guys. It's funny having Bobby on the show. He wasn't so outgoing as you'd want him to be. He's like, yeah, man, it was cool. We did all that stuff, and you're just wanting to get so much out of him because you just you respect him and all that stuff. And going to see those shows back then. I mean, I got to see him. It was one of the best shows I think I've ever seen. Was Pantera and White Zombie. I Hate God opened the show. It was, what a night of music. That was a night, 1996. It was a peak of White Zombie. It was a great tour.
I saw that tour in Chicago, and the show I saw it was Deftones, White Zombie, and Pantera. And 2 days after that, I was so blown away by that fucking show. 2 days later, I went on vacation to Florida. And that's when I got my Pantera tattoo because I just could not. That night was so fucking amazing, and oh my god, Phil was so fucked up, and he took the Deftones shirt because if you remember around that time they had a Deftones shirt where the logo was kind of like Metallica.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
this
I
around
had
the
that
time.
shirt.
Yeah, this is the time Load came out, I think, or Reload, one of those horrible fucking albums, and he grabbed the shirt. He goes, looks like a fucking Metallica shirt, and he wiped his ass with it. And I mean, it was just fucking amazing. I mean, Pantera, and then Dimebag. Again, like I talk about, Pantera was the last band to really change the game for metal. You're talking about the last guitar god in Dime. To me, I mean, there was Eddie Van Halen, and then there was Dime, the last one to really change it. And don't get me wrong, there's great players out there, some great musicians. But Dime took it to another level. And this is a guy who would make you pick up a guitar and put it down at the same time. He would inspire you, but at the same time, like, I'm never going to be this. Why even try?
Yeah.
But just, man, I wish, I had a great night getting drunk with Phil, and I wish I would have had a night like that with fucking Dimebag, man, because he just, seems salt of the earth, man. And I thought whatever Dime did, man, even when, Pantera broke up in Damage Plan, I love that fucking record. A lot of people, complain about it. It's new metal and shit like that. To me, it was a great fucking metal album and great guitar playing. And I miss the guy so fucking much.
Yeah, the one I know we're kind of celebrating Dime tonight, but also going to talk a little bit about Vinny. And my favorite moment ever with Vinny Paul was a few years ago. Hell Yeah comes through Louisville. Chris Cale from Five Finger Death Punch is in town. He's like, hey, why don't you go down and hang out with me at the show? And I'm like, well, and no pun intended, but I was like, hell yeah. And so we go down to the show. It's in a smaller venue. We're side stage. I'm just watching Vinny play drums, like, right there, like arm's length away. After the show, we go downstairs to their little backstage area. Vinny's holding court, telling all these old stories, and they had just played Columbus, Ohio, for the first time since Dime had been murdered, and so he was talking about that day and how everybody was coming up to him, and he said he had a moment at the very first song, but after they played one song, he was okay. But it was one of those nights where I wish I pulled an Aaron Camaro and just had a recorder, poking out of my pocket, and just recorded the whole thing. But man, he was fantastic, and the whole band has always been so cordial to the fans, and that's what makes them, I think, my favorite band, was the fact of how great they were to the fans, to the crew. It was just one big giant, Pantera family.
Oh yeah, and man, there was nothing. You can't explain it really truly to people who weren't there. When they were the biggest band. And it was just, and they were a band that metal needed at that time. Because everything was going grunge and alternative, and Metallica, the band that you thought would never sell out, right, sold out, and then here comes this new band that not only changes metal but reminds you of how Metallica used to be, and I mean it was just incredible, and all four of them were absolutely amazing at what they did. I mean, they were, you needed all four of those to have Pantera,
right?
But Dime was just, I mean, he was something else. And I remember, like it was yesterday, the day he passed. I found out about it listening to Howard Stern. I was a huge Stern listener, and I found out it happened. And I did a job early in the morning, and we were done by noon. And I'm an electrician, and we went back to the shop, and I told him, I didn't say what happened, but I was like, a friend of mine just died. But that's how I felt. Yeah. Even though I never met the guy, I was like, a friend of mine just died. I need to leave. And I left. I went right to a store, and I bought Crown Royal, which I don't even drink, But I bought Crown and then some Coca-Cola and went home and drank that whole fucking thing, Black Tooths all night. And, man, what a fucking loss, man. What a loss, not only, as a human being and a musician, but what a loss to metal music. I mean, because nobody has stepped up and grabbed that torch, and it's unfortunate. I hope somebody does. As much as nobody will ever replace Pantera to me, I hope there's a band that just takes it to that next level, it takes it back to the grassroots, and expands on it. And I'm still waiting.
Yeah, it'll eventually come, man. But it's funny, they always talk about how the metal in the 90s was on such a lull. But to me, I was a metal fan in the 90s, and I had Pantera. So to me, Pantera's still selling out sheds to me. So it looked fine to me.
Oh, yeah. But I think what it was with the 90s is in the 80s, you had a lot of bands,
right,
on a great level doing shit. Metal's getting popular, and a lot of it was the cock rock fluffy stuff. But you still had a lot of great metal bands that were doing huge business. In the 90s, you had Pantera. that was all you fucking had, but it was all you needed at the same time. It's like, if that's your only outlet, you're doing pretty fucking good. But there's never been another fucking Pantera, and I wish there was,
I agree with that wholeheartedly, man. Well, Ian, I do appreciate you taking the time tonight. It was great seeing you in the Rock and Pod Expo, Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, but we didn't hang out enough. You and me really need to get fucked. I mean, like I've done peyote with Ken Mills, and I haven't had enough time with the great Josh Toomey, man. But it was great seeing you. But next year we got to hang out more, dude. We got to get fucked. We got to fuck up some shit Pantera style. That's something I used to do with my friends, man. We would get fucked up, listen to Pantera, watch the videos, and we would break some shit. We would find something, around the apartment we didn't need anymore, like an old fan. Just something you would break it Pantera style. And that's what we did. You and me need to go into Baco's room, and just throw a TV out the window. We'll blame it on loose cannon, or fuck it. We need Chris Aiken, who you're gonna have on the show tonight too. We need to go throw something out of his window because he's a Sammy Hagar fan, so he deserves it. But we got to do some shit Pantera style, man. Dedicate that shit to Dime, drink some Black Tooths, and get fucked up. But thank you so much for having me on here. I'm very honored, and man, anytime I can spread the word about Pantera, I'm happy to do so. All right, man, give me a Pantera song to play you out. Okay, well, I don't know what you played so far, but gotta go. Shit, I'm gonna give you something I know nobody else picked. that I love. How about some motherfucking Medicine Man?
Wow, Medicine Man off of the first album. Let's pull that.
It's
up.
a Medicine Man. Not the first album, but the first
album. Official.
Yeah.
We'll call it that.
Yeah.
Well, Ian, man, I can't wait to Pantera-rise. Ooh, I don't think I've ever used it. Pantera-rise.
I like that. Copyright that shit,
right.
man. Make that you already stole their logo, you know. Pantera-rise. Let's do that shit.
We'll do that next year, man. We'll take care, and we'll have you on again soon, man.
All right, brother, man. Take care.
See ya.
All right.
Blow me up, dude. I'm pre-blown, dude. You know, I like, it's like preheat. You know how you set it up to blow up? I'm already pre-blown, so I'm already hooked up. Does that make no sense? Of course it don't. Dime bondings.
All right, guys, huge thank you to Chris Aiken of the Classic Metal Show, Jason Bakken, Baco from Cobras and Fire, and always the Ayatollah of Alcoholica, Ian Wadley of the Rock and Metal Combat Podcast, all coming on tonight to celebrate Dimebag Darrell, who would have been 53 years old just a couple of days ago, trying to do something fun on his birthday rather than his death day. So just a huge black tooth up to the sky, all that fun stuff. You guys know I love Pantera, so let's play a couple of more Pantera tunes. Let's get out of here. Cobras and Fire is up next on uncontrollednoise.com. And a huge thank you to you guys for checking out the show. And until next Thursday, I've been Joshua Toomey. This has been Talk to Me, live on uncontrollednoise.com.
Wonder what's my happens when
rich, man. I'm gonna go ahead and clean myself up a margarita right here before they kick me out of this
Fucking wrong sign, man.
All right.
Right there, I don't care. Yeah! Yeah!
That was pretty bad, but
I don't care, dude. It's fucking time.
Making fans' dreams come true. One fan at a time.
Philip H. Anselmo, and you are listening to Talk to Me with Joshua.